Hello everyone, welcome back to another election prediction video. This time we have Kamala Harris, the Vice President of the United States, up against Nikki Haley, former governor of South Carolina. Now Nikki Haley, she's definitely seen as a more moderate type of Republican. She mainly agrees with most of the policies Trump agrees on anyway, so I really don't think she would do quite terribly as I don't know, some super moderate candidate like Larry Hogan could really just not appeal to the GOP base in the rurals. I still think Nikki Haley would do quite well in the rural areas of states. Maybe not as well as in the populist Rust Belt states. I could definitely see a drop in there in the rural support, but she could counteract that with better suburban turnout, especially among independent voters, which could definitely sway the election here. So again, we're seeing Nikki Haley doing quite well against Joe Biden in a new poll here. And we also see that at Harris in a YouGov poll, she has her favorability numbers are 4 points worse than Biden. Biden's at -15 in that poll. Kamala Harris is at -19. So without a doubt, Harris would do worse than Biden in this election matchup against a much better candidate, Nikki Haley, which is probably one of the best candidates they could run right now. But let's just get into this. Besides Glenn Youngkin obviously would be the best candidate. All right. So the first few states, we're going to do the safe Republican ones. Alaska, I just think this will be pretty much locked in if they go with Nikki Haley as the GOP nominee. I think she would pretty effectively end Alaska from going to likely Republican in this scenario. Plus, again, Harris wouldn't do well in the rurals. I think they would come out in force against her. In Iowa, I just don't see Harris being competitive in the state, nor do I think she'll actually spend time on trying to make the state competitive because it's just so far gone for the Democratic Party that I don't really think she thinks she could win it. In Ohio, I'd put it as likely Republican. I could still see Harris boosting minority turnout, especially black turnout in the urban areas and the suburbs in Ohio, but we could see Nikki Haley doing a lot better with independent voters in the suburbs as well. But I still think it'd just be probably a 9-point Nikki Haley victory in Ohio against Harris. It's almost safe, but again, I think Harris would still do pretty decent with black voters in Ohio, which would definitely help her from keeping it go to a safe Republican. In Florida, again, it's a lost cause for Democrats, so it's not really a surprise that it's likely Republican here. I think Nikki Haley would unite most of the Republican Party in Florida and probably easily win Florida by 8 to 9 points against Harris. With Texas, again, she isn't Donald Trump. She wouldn't have as bad margins in the urban and suburban areas in Texas. She would actually do a bit better than Trump here, winning Texas by about 6 points or maybe even 7 points against Harris. In Colorado, it's still a very Democratic state, which definitely hinges on a lot of minority turnout here. And I still think Harris will get pretty good numbers with minority voters. Maybe she'll underperform a bit with independents here, but I still think she'd win Colorado by over 10 points. In New Mexico, I have New Mexico actually going down to a 4.5% margin of victory for Harris. I think she would definitely underperform Biden's numbers here by quite a bit, especially the independent voters, probably ending up being a lot more favorable towards Nikki Haley. She isn't as toxic as Trump is in terms of favorability here with independent voters, I would say. Okay, the next state, North Carolina and Georgia. We'll do both of them. Again, North Carolina and Georgia, I think a lot of it hinges on independent voters, and I could see Nikki Haley doing a lot better with them. So I would have North Carolina and Georgia both going to Nikki Haley by both lean margins. She probably wins North Carolina by 4 against Harris and winning Georgia by about 2 against Harris as well. In Arizona, I think she would definitely get a lot of those anti-Trump Republicans who didn't vote for Trump in 2020 to back her. She's pretty similar to Trump on the issues and policies, and she doesn't have that toxic Trump personality that independent voters really despise in the state of Arizona. So I really think she could fix that problem here, and she'd probably do well with moderate Republicans in this state too, which is an important part of a Democratic victory in Arizona, is to appeal to those more anti-Trump Republicans, or just those right-leaning independents that dislike Trump. But I have Arizona going to Nikki Haley by about 3 against Harris. Nevada as well, just with independent voters. I think Nikki Haley would do quite well here and probably win Nevada by about 1.5% against Harris, I would say. In Nebraska's second, I actually have Nikki Haley narrowly winning here by a tilt margin. Again, there's a lot of Democratic trends here, which is why it's tilt, not lean. But I could see Harris losing here just narrowly due to independent voters probably ending up going towards Nikki Haley. Okay. Virginia I would have as lean Democratic as well. I still think Harris would do well with black turnout in the state, but we'll definitely see like a lot of establishment voters might be ending up going towards Nikki Haley. Again, Virginia just really hated Donald Trump. I think if you run a different candidate than Trump, who's a lot less right-wing than him, I think Virginia would probably go down to a likely or even lean margin in some of these scenarios here. It isn't as democratic as we think, but it would probably be a 3.5% victory for Harris in Virginia. Again, I don't think it would flip. In Maine, I still think it'd be likely Democratic. I just don't see it going towards Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley's still pretty socially conservative. In Maine second, again, the rurals really would dislike Kamala Harris. I think they would come out against her here in Maine second, which is a more moderate type of district. You can see Nikki Haley doing a bit better there than Trump would. Okay, we're down to the last 5 states here. So we'll start off with Minnesota. I think this would go down to a lean margin here. I think a more moderate type of Republican will be able to appeal a bit better in the state of Minnesota. In New Hampshire, honestly, I could see Nikki Haley getting this narrow victory just because of how unpopular Kamala Harris is compared to Joe Biden. A minus 4% difference between Biden and Harris would definitely end up probably helping Nikki Haley here with independent voters. I could see her just narrowly winning here against Vice President Kamala Harris. Okay, we're down to Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. The problem with Nikki Haley is, again, I could see her having a bit of a struggle in the rural areas and boosting like populist turnout. But again, she would do a lot better in the suburban areas, especially in Waukesha, Wisconsin. She would definitely improve on that margin in that county there. She should probably do a lot better in the Pennsylvania suburbs than Trump would. So that could counteract her losing a bit of rural populist voters. And I really think that would probably be the case here. And we also have to factor in, I think Harris wouldn't be as strong as Biden would in the rural areas. She'd definitely lose a lot of support among them there. But again, I would have Pennsylvania and Wisconsin narrowly going to Nikki Haley. Pennsylvania probably by 1.5, same with Wisconsin, 1.5. But I still think Harris would do quite decent with African-American turnout in Michigan, especially in Detroit. I still have Michigan ending up going towards Harris by a tilt Democratic, or I would even say lean. Probably like 1.5% she would still win Michigan by. But Nikki Haley would probably end up winning the popular vote by about 3.5% against Kamala Harris. So Michigan goes against quite relative against the nation here, just because that trifecta would probably make Michigan bluer coming in the next few elections. I still think Harris would do quite well here. So I would highly appreciate if you subscribe to the channel, and you should let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with this scenario. All right, I'll see you guys in the next video.